When I ask somebody about their least favorite film genre, for most people, westerns are way down the list, competing with musicals for last spot. They always tell me these cowboy movies all look the same, don't they? Even if you think that most westerns are the same, you can't deny that the genre itself is incredibly iconic. At this point, even if somehow you have never seen one in your whole life, you'll have an idea of what's going to happen as soon as you see that lonesome stranger riding into town. And even if for you it's a drawback because it makes the plot predictable, I actually think that that's a huge advantage that westerns have. In fact, a set of familiar tropes to stick to gives you much more freedom to be creative within the limits of the genre. For example, you know there's usually going to be a duel at some point in the story, but there are so many ways you can choose to portray it. You can make a 20-minute stare down leading up to a shootout like Sergio Leone does, or you can cut straight to the point like Kevin Costner in Open Range. The outcome can be a classic hero's victory over evil, or it can be a messy shootout with no clear line between who's morally right or wrong. The Western is referred to as the quintessential American genre, but because of its malleability and the widespread familiarity people have with it, it's a much more international genre than you might think it is. In fact, it's been adapted by several countries over the years, some of which have become iconic all over the world like spaghetti westerns. Some countries are pretty obvious settings for a western like Australia or Mexico, but so many reimagined versions of the western have also been made in South Korea, the Soviet Union, and Czechoslovakia, among others. It's a perfect way for you as the viewer to immerse yourself into a culture completely different from your own. At first, there are familiar elements of the genre to lead you into the story, but what makes the rest of the movie special is the unique historical and cultural context of the country it was made in. Westerns don't just transcend space, but also time. They give us a glimpse into modern American history, starting with the golden age of the genre, when filmmakers like John Ford and Howard Hawks created the classic archetypes we know today. But the political, economic, and social issues of the early 1970s created deep mistrust in the government among the American people. The romanticized view of the Old West broke down and westerns became more cynical, showing the brutality of life on the frontier like never before. Some movies also tackled issues usually ignored in the old westerns, including slavery and the impact of American westward expansion on the indigenous population. But others show modern America head-on, like Lonely Are the Brave, about a man who insists on living his life like a cowboy in a world where the frontier doesn't exist anymore. There are also more recent examples like Hell or High Water and No Country for Old Men, showing a much more desperate and violent reality of some lives in modern-day Texas. I like to have fun when I watch a movie like anybody else, but I think that the most impactful films for me are those that also reveal something about human nature. I think one of the best ways to see the essence of a person is when they're in a critical situation, and westerns often deal with men and women living under harsh conditions on the frontier. They have no connection whatsoever to the comfort of city life. They're just trying to survive on what little they've got in the scorching hot Texan desert or the impenetrable snowy mountains of Colorado, where they can't trust anyone but themselves. When you take people away from civilization and bring them into such unknown territory, that's when you see their true worth or cowardice. You might have noticed that nowadays westerns are not as popular as they used to be, even though there are still filmmakers who are passionate about it enough to keep it alive, like Taylor Sheridan or Kevin Costner. But I don't think that the genre is dead like a lot of people say, and I think it will always be alive in some shape or form because in the strictness of its principles, it's still one of the most creatively stimulating film genres out there.